One dress, one photo shoot, one holiday promo, and a set of accusations serious enough that Meghan Markle's spokesperson has publicly called them highly defamatory and false. So what really happened with the green dress that people are now calling the Frockgate scandal? Did Meghan quietly walk away with a designer gown she was supposed to return? Or is this another example of how a rumor becomes a global story long before the facts are clear? Today, we are going to slow this all the way down and look at what we actually know about the dress, what is pure speculation, and what this whole thing reveals about the way Meghan is covered in the media. Welcome to Royally Misrepresented, your calm space for context and facts. Here, we don't chase outrage. We look at timelines, sources, and patterns, especially when it comes to stories that turn Meghan Markle into a cartoon villain. Before we get into the details, if careful commentary like this is useful to you, you can support the channel by liking this video and subscribing. It helps other people who want thoughtful conversations actually find them. Now let's walk through the story of one green dress, step by step. On the surface, this sounds like a small story about clothes, but the stakes are not small. Calling someone a thief in public is serious. It goes to character and honesty. It feeds a wider narrative about Meghan as greedy or dishonest that has already been used against her in other contexts. At the same time, if powerful people really are bending normal rules and expecting special treatment, that also matters. People have a right to ask questions about how celebrity culture works when thousands of pounds worth of clothing are involved. So we're going to ask three simple questions. What actually happened with this dress? Who is making the allegations and what are they basing them on? What does Meghan say in response, and how does that fit into normal industry practice? Then we'll end with the most important part, what we still don't know, and how we want to respond as viewers when a story like this lands in our feeds. Part 1, the dress and the timeline. First, the basic facts. In 2022, Meghan took part in a major photoshoot for Variety. In that shoot, she wore a one-shouldered emerald green gown by the brand Galvan, a style known as the Ushuaia dress. Priced at just under $1,700. The images were widely shared at the time and the dress was clearly identified by fashion outlets. Fast forward to late 2025. Netflix releases promotional material for a holiday special linked to Meghan's lifestyle series with Love Meghan. In the trailer and stills, she is again seen in what appears to be that same green Galvan dress, decorating a table and speaking to camera about her love of the holiday season. Fans who follow her style closely notice the repeat immediately. Articles highlight that she has reworn the exact gown from the earlier Variety shoot. On its own, this could have been a simple story about rewearing a memorable dress for a new project. But by the time the holiday promo appears, there's already a rumor in the air about that wardrobe. Part 2, where the theft story came from. The seed of this rumor goes back to a podcast appearance in early 2024. Journalist Vanessa Grigoriadis appears on Andrew Gould's show Heretics and says that, according to people she spoke to, there was a high-profile photoshoot where a lot of items were not returned after Meghan wore them. She doesn't name the shoot, but notes that some staff were surprised, and uses the phrase sticky fingers at the end of a photoshoot, adding that this does sometimes happen in the industry. At that point, it is unclear which shoot she means. Later, when tabloids start writing about the green dress, they strongly suggest she was referring to the 2022 Variety feature, because that was one of Meghan's most recent major shoots at the time of the podcast. In November 2025, the dress reappearing in the Netflix promo gives the rumor fresh oxygen. Outlets like Page Six and the New York Post run stories quoting unnamed sources who claim Meghan took the green dress home from the Variety shoot under the idea that it was for her archive while she was still connected to the royal world. Those sources say some people on the team did not expect the gown to be kept. At the same time, commentary pieces start pulling in an older claim from a very critical biography of Meghan by Tom Bauer. In that book, he alleges that during a Canadian department store campaign years ago, she walked away in a pair of Aquazzura shoes without leaving them behind for the wardrobe department, and later wore what appears to be the same heels for her royal engagement photos. None of these allegations have been proven in court, and they rely heavily on anonymous sources and a biographer whose work is openly hostile toward Meghan. But put together, they create a damaging narrative of a woman with so-called sticky fingers, someone who quietly helps herself to luxury items that don't belong to her. By the time internet commentators start calling the dress story Frockgate, the idea that she has a pattern of this behavior has already been seeded in the public mind. Part 3. What Meghan and her team actually say. For a long time, Meghan kept silent about all of this. That changed in late November 2025, when the story had spread across social media and tabloids. Her spokesperson gave a statement to outlets including People magazine, pushing back in very strong terms. They said that the suggestion that any clothing was taken without the knowledge and agreement of the on-set stylists or their teams was not only false but highly defamatory, and that any items kept were retained transparently in line with contractual arrangements. In a follow-up reported by other outlets, the spokesperson added that these claims describe Meghan as committing theft or acting dishonestly, and that they are unsubstantiated and have caused serious harm to her reputation. Legal commentators note that using language like highly defamatory is not casual. It often signals that lawyers are considering action if the accusations continue to spread. So according to Meghan's camp, there are two key points. First, there was no sneaking anything out. If she kept the dress, it was part of a normal, agreed process between her team, the stylists, and whoever controlled the wardrobe for the shoot. Second, they argue that this isn't just a disagreement about who owns a gown. It's a claim that she is the kind of person who steals, and that crosses a line from gossip into reputational harm. People magazine also spoke to an industry source who described it as standard for very high-profile clients to retain certain items from big shoots, sometimes for security reasons. Clothes worn by royals and other public figures can become valuable memorabilia, and there have been cases where items turn up in resale or auction settings. Keeping the peace with the talent removes that temptation and gives them control of how and when it is seen again. Other coverage, including a detailed piece in the Daily Beast, notes that Meghan's team appears to accept that she did keep the dress, but insists it was done within the rules, while some fashion insiders question whether this is truly common practice or just something reserved for a very small number of elite clients. In other words, even people who work in this world do not fully agree on what should happen with clothes after a shoot. Part 4. How photoshoot wardrobe usually works. This brings us to the wider context, because most viewers have never been on a set like this. At a typical magazine or promotional shoot, clothing arrives from different places. Some pieces are loaned from designers for a single day and are expected back almost immediately. Others might come from showrooms or from the stylist's own archive. Sometimes the production company itself buys pieces outright. When a very famous person is involved, things can get more complicated. Contracts may cover who pays for what, who can reuse which images, and what happens to key items of clothing. In some cases, a star will negotiate to keep a particular piece. They might pay for it, the brand might gift it, or there might be a written agreement about its future use. It's also true that sometimes people bend the rules. Things go missing from sets. Items are kept without full sign-off. That happens at every level of the industry, not just with royalty. What makes this dress different is not just the question of ownership, it's the way the story has been framed. In one version, a woman living in a large house with large media deals is casually grabbing luxury items she could easily buy herself. In another version, a woman who has been the target of years of hostile coverage is now facing a fresh round of accusations based largely on hearsay. Part 5. What we know and what we still don't know. So after all of this, what can we say with honesty? We know Meghan wore the green Galvan gown for a variety shoot in 2022 and that she wore what appears to be the same dress again in a Netflix holiday special promo in 2025. We know that a journalist repeated off-the-record claims on a podcast that a lot of items were not returned after a high-profile shoot, and that she linked this to older negative stories about Meghan's wardrobe from a critical biography. We know that some tabloids then framed these claims as proof that Meghan kept the dress without permission and suggested there is a pattern of similar behavior. we know that Meghan's spokesperson has publicly and strongly denied that anything was taken without agreement and has described the theft claims as false, unsubstantiated, and highly defamatory. We know that at least some people who work in fashion and media say it can be normal for big names to retain key pieces from shoots, especially when there's a risk that those pieces might be exploited for profit later. Others question how normal that really is. What we don't know is crucial. We don't know the exact terms of the contract between Meghan, Variety, the stylists, and the brand. We don't know what was agreed on email or in person when the wardrobe was booked and later returned. We don't know whether anyone formally complained at the time, or whether this only surfaced later in conversations between people who were unhappy. And we don't know whether any legal action will ever be taken that might force those details into the open. So when people say she stole the dress, they are going beyond the evidence that is publicly available. There is a real difference between saying there are conflicting claims about how a dress was handled and saying she is a thief. For a channel like this one, the point is not to tell you what to think, but to draw a clear line between fact, allegation, and interpretation. So I want to put the question back to you, but with a twist. When you look at the full picture, where do you feel the real story sits? Is this mainly about one dress? Or is it about how ready some outlets are to believe the worst version of any story about Meghan, especially when it involves money or status? Have you noticed how often small details in her life are turned into moral tests that she can only fail? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Please keep it thoughtful and respectful, and sharing it with someone who is seeing only the scandal and not the context. At the end of the day, one green dress will not decide Meghan Markle's legacy. What will matter is the pattern of her work, her choices, and the way history remembers how she was covered. Stories like Frockgate are useful for us for a different reason. They show how quickly a single detail, a dress, a look, a rumor can be turned into a symbol of character. They remind us how important it is to check who is talking, what they know, and what they might gain. Thank you for spending this time here and for choosing slow thinking in a very fast news cycle. Take care of yourself and of the people around you, and I'll see you in the next video.